baby.
I'm
to create a space where we no longer have to put up the shield of code switching, the shield of trying to pretend so that you fake it till you make it, the shield of trying to be the spokesperson for everyone else. Creating a space where we can just show up and be vulnerable and talk about the things that matter and do it in a way where men are still thought of as men because they're actually being open and honest with one another, supporting one another, and we're doing it in an environment that's loving and is communal, and we're giving people a taste of the male psyche, really, and rehumanizing the Black man in the process.
The song reminds me of growing up. My mother used to play this song. She was a young wild one, I call it, going out all the time, taking me with her to the clubs when I was 5 years old, 6 years old, leaving me out there with the bouncers. Let me not shame my mother, though. I love her because I got everything from her, including that enterprising, that push the boundaries spirit. And this song, I remember listening to this song at the reggae concerts with my mother. And it reminds me of my childhood. And as I think back to my childhood, I remember some of those comforts, some of those things that just a smell, just a sight brings you back to a place. Milk and cookies. Milk and cookies. When I was younger, I used to look up to my cousin. And I've been through like 5 identity crises. It's a thing. Catch the wave if you haven't. But when I was younger, I was very much searching for my identity because I grew up an island kid, 2 island parents, went to a private school with only 3 black kids. And so when I was out in my environment, it was a very different situation than when I was at home. And then when I was trying to represent for my culture or my skin color or whatever the case may be, every interaction was different. But my cousin had it together. He was a couple years older than me. He was light-skinned. You know, he was a boy turning man, and I was just a boy. And we would hoop. And he was so good. I know y'all watched that Jordan documentary. So you know when you see somebody who's just got suave on the court, and they just inspire you, you just pick up a ball and be like, I can do that shit. He was like that. Like, he picked up the ball, and you were just like, this dude's going somewhere. And so I wanted to hoop and be like him. And then it extended off the court, too. Because all the women, from my perspective, wanted him too. And he had game. Y'all know what game is. I don't even know if they call it game anymore, but they called it game back then, and he had it, and I wanted it. And so I looked up to him. And I remember after our long games, evenings on the court, we used to play 4, 5, 6 hours till the bottoms of our feet were raw. We'd come home, and I used to drink milk with everything because of this dude, because he used to drink milk with everything. We'd come home, have a bowl of spaghetti, eat some milk with it, drink some milk with it. He used to eat Oreos, drink some milk with it. To the point where when I decided I needed to get bulkier, I needed to get bigger, I was like, these Oreos are coming in handy, I'm about to drink this milk and cookie. Up until I was probably 30 years old. I struggled with trying to gain weight, and I used to resort to drinking milk and cookies excessively to try and put on weight.
And I remember some of the things that he used to teach me when it came to women. And some of the rules of the game that I proudly lived up to. And one of them that stuck out to me distinctly was, you have to be able to get over her in at most 30 minutes. On to the next one. So you never allow yourself to get close enough to where 30 minutes goes by and you're still pining over that situation. And don't get me wrong, I don't blame him, because we were all, his mentor was Tupac, which actually is a great mentor. Subscribing to the thug life and all that other shit, pick and choose. But my mentor, I looked up to him, he looked up to Tupac. And so essentially I looked up to whatever he picked up from. And it was bitches and hoes, this, that, and the other. And that was cool. And I got good at that shit too. And eventually I started figuring out my own way. But I always kept those milk and cookies. I always turned back to the milk and cookies. Comfort. I need to get stronger. I need to get bigger. I need to put on some weight because I'm skinny. Milk and cookies. I want a snack. I'm craving carbs. Milk and cookies. I haven't talked to my cousin in a long time. Milk and cookies. But what I realize most is that sometimes you just gotta do shit that's uncomfortable.
And put down the things that taste the sweetest, but perhaps just weren't serving you. Milk and cookies. Thank you for joining us out there online. This is To Me For You, stories of self-exploration from the heart. This is the show that invites men of color to share their vulnerable truths on stage in a room full of strangers and loved ones
In order to promote community healing through shared vulnerability. We do this every month, and the rules are simple. It's just coming from the heart. No prescripted material, no essays, no dissertations, no poetry. Just what is on your mind when you take the seat. We give everybody 10 minutes to share their truth,
and we hold space as much and as strong and as well as we can to receive the people that are coming up here. So, with that being said, I appreciate every one of you for tuning in. We've had to pivot, and we've made such a turn in the face of these events. Everybody needs brotherhood and camaraderie and support and uplifting, so we appreciate you for joining in on this journey. I'm going to be introducing my first speaker, his name is Kwesi. I met Kwesi back in the day at another brotherhood meeting, and he's a brother of very many passions. He's a world traveler. He's a poet. He's actually graced the stage before. And he wants to build wellness centers around the world that are holistic, and they incorporate finance, which is his passion. So if y'all will give a couple of snaps virtually for my man Kwesi.
I'm prolific, so gifted. I'm the type that's gon' go get it, no kidding. Breaking down a switch in front of your building. Sitting on the steps, feeling no feelings. Last night it was a cold killing. You gotta keep the devil in his hole, nigga. But you know how it go, nigga. I'm front line every time it's on, nigga. 100 proof flow. run and shoot pro. 458 drop, playing bulletproof soul. Every few shows, I just buy some new gold. Circle got smaller, everybody can't go. Downtown Diamond District, jewelers like yo.
Good evening. I'm hoping that everybody can hear me through the microphone. I have no headphones, so I can't hear myself. But I'm just speaking into existence. So thank you, everybody who joined us virtually this evening in the midst of quarantine. And I've been blessed enough through the work that I do to be able to connect with a lot of people virtually, which is a blessing in today's day and age. But just because we're socially distanced doesn't mean we need to be virtually distanced as well. So I pray that everybody who is listening, who is taking part in this activity today, is feeling the vibrations and feels like they're part of this space, because you are. But on to the story. So my name is Kwesi. That's not a name that I was born with. It's actually a name that I adopted, a name that I chose as a result of time that I spent in Ghana. And I always like to ask people, do you know where Ghana is? Which is very, very important, because a lot of people in America, sometimes they haven't even traveled outside their own city, let alone outside of their state, outside of the country. And I can say for absolute fact that was a pivotal turning point in my life, traveling outside the country, as a matter of fact, back home to the motherland. And I know for a fact that that is where I am from, that is where our ancestors are from, because it felt like home when I was there. And milk and cookies. Honestly, that experience was a proverbial milk and cookies, right? Like a warming home type experience. And I can say for absolute certain that going to Ghana and the person that I became and what I shed as a result of that experience has led to what I am and who I am here today, sharing this story. But why was Ghana so powerful? It will be 5 years ago in August that I returned back from the motherland. I lived there for a year, so it wasn't an excursion, wasn't a safari, it wasn't a vacation, right? It was an actual homestay, right? Like, I lived there for a year, and if any of you all remember, this was during the so-called Ebola crisis, right? And I was able to see for the first time how powerful the American media machine is, because I was there in the so-called land. I was being devastated by Ebola, and I'm looking around with the Ghanaians like, who's devastated? Nobody had on face masks in Ghana. I can tell you that for certain, right? And it feels very similar to what's happening right now. And not to say that it's not important to be aware of our surroundings, but I don't know anybody who's gotten coronavirus. I'm not saying it hasn't happened, right? But is it as bad as the media is portraying it to be? Is it bad enough for 30 million people to file for unemployment, for their 401ks and their life savings to be 30, 40% in the tank, right? Like, is it really that bad? This is an election year, in case anybody doesn't know or anybody doesn't remember. And even that, bring it back. So going to Ghana, right? And I remember seeing Ebola on the other side, and believe it or not, that was one of the most peaceful experiences in my life, right? Being in Ghana when the entire world seemed afraid, but I was in a sense isolated. I read more than I ever did. I didn't watch much TV. I never used the microwave, right? I was able to cleanse my body and my spirit and my mind of a lot of things that here in America we deem as normal, right? Everyday activities. But are these everyday activities adding to our lives or taking away from it? Because there's no in between. And this is something, if anybody that's watching this right now has traveled outside of the country, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you haven't, I might have lost you somewhere along the way. But just keep up with me, right? So in Ghana, I was able to shed a lot of layers. And I finally understood for the first time in my life, there's no such thing as a nigger outside of America. Like, there's absolutely no such thing. And Malcolm X said this 50, 60 years ago, right? And there's absolutely not. Because I was in a land where everybody looked like me, but nobody called each other my nigger, right? And not to take away from that, I understand. It's complicated. But over in Ghana, these were people with a culture, with a language, with a tradition, with a culinary practice, right? That treated each other like human beings more than like things. And that's something that, unless you've traveled outside of America, you might have no idea what I'm talking about. But I do want to make sure that I'm on time. I don't see a time or anything. Okay, I got the thumbs up from the director. Outstanding. So, long story short, wrapping it back around to milk and cookies, I really urge everybody here, travel. Because as a so-called young black male, whatever that means, where is black? Where do you find, point on the map, where does black come from? Right? Because I know where Ghanaians come from. I know where Nigerians come from. I know where South Africans come from. Where does black come from? Right? It's really important for us as a people, as a culture, as a community, to identify with something that's not the white man's imagination. Right? We need to get in touch with who and what we are as a people. Otherwise, we are never going to rise and grow beyond this caterpillar phase that we've been in for 400 or 500 years. Right? Like, we're constantly going to stay here at the bottom of the totem pole, and everybody's going to spit on us and take from us what is rightfully ours, which is our bodies, our minds, our souls, our destinies. Right? So many things. Right? Milk and cookies. Travel. If you can't travel outside of your city, open up a freaking book. Right? Travel somewhere besides Netflix. Travel somewhere besides Instagram. Right? Even if you're on Instagram planning your next destination, open a book. Because some of the best things you'll ever find are hidden between those hard covers. Even yourself might be hidden between those hard covers. Into Egypt again with ships. Right? Highly recommend. Highly recommend. Asada. Highly recommend. The autobiography of Malcolm X. Highly recommend. The autobiography of Frederick Douglass. Highly recommend. There are a lot of books, and not just about slavery, but in all honesty, I don't feel like a lot has changed in the last 400 years. Right? We keep repeating the same things over and over and over again, expecting a different outcome. And I promise you, at the epicenter of all of this is ourselves, is our identity, is our character, is our lineage, is our natural homeland traditions. And you're probably like, oh my goodness, this brother went to Africa with a funny name. Right now he comes back here trying to preach to us. Hell yeah, I'm trying to preach to you. Because everything in your life is preaching to you. But what is it teaching you? And who are you praying to? What are you praying to? Are you praying to yourself, understanding that you are created in the image of God? This is not going to be a popular opinion, but I don't give a shit. I don't sell ice cream. We are the original people. We are the original people. And I truly believe that what is happening to us here, as well as around the world, is ordained by God. I truly believe that. And it's not a popular opinion, but I believe that in my soul. And until we get back right with the laws, with the commandments that were given to us by God, nothing is going to change. We're just repeating the same mistakes over and over and over again. Milk and cookies. Come back home. Come back home.
All right. Well, of course, you definitely came with the heat on that one, or the light, one of the two. But I'm going to kick it off because, you touched on quite a few things, and I kind of want to see if I can bridge some of these things. But I want to know from you, what, if you could correlate one of an experience that you had that led to what I'm calling, it sounds enlightenment for you.
Mm-hmm.
What was said vulnerability or experience that you had to embrace in order to be where you are now?
Man, I don't have enough time to detail a lifetime of
Keep it short,
experiences. Absolutely. But I will say, for absolute certain, going to Ghana was the first time in my life that I was truly vulnerable, right? Because I was no longer this idea of what other people said that I was and said that I was supposed to be. Because over in Ghana, that was the first time in my life I saw black men smile, like genuinely. Not when they were busting a nut or beating somebody up or playing some girl, right? But like actually smile because they were happy to be alive. And that was, for lack of a better word, that fucked me up in a lot of ways. And it showed me, oh my goodness, there are other ways to be a black man outside of all the ways that I've been taught and told. Mm-hmm. And something that I didn't realize is I had been fighting these bouts of depression for my entire life because the identity that was being cast onto me and who I actually was inside were in constant conflict. And when I went to Ghana and I saw, oh my goodness, I can just be myself. I could just be myself. And it allowed me, again, to shed these identities. And so when I call myself Kwesi, that's because that's who I actually am. What is a name anyway? Besides letters and a word that's attached to you. Nothing against your names. I'm sure they're beautiful, but still, did you choose that name? Do you feel like that name is who you are and who you identify as? That's what happened for me in Ghana. That was that moment when I saw black men smiling just because they were happy to be alive.
Okay. So I want to make sure that the audience knows that these questions and answers are for y'all. So please feel free to chime in. This is an interactive session. It's provided that our guest speakers invite the questions, but feel free to chime in. I will be fielding those, or will be fielding those questions live. But Kwesi, one other continuing point from that is, I hear you advocating for people to travel, and then more specifically, which I don't know if you said outright, but travel to Africa. And you might have even said travel to Ghana. I'm not really sure. But are you saying that because you came back with this experience and now you are enlightened, or however you feel, do you feel as if though it's something you have to go back to the motherland to embrace, to feel, to walk with in your truth today?
That's an
as somebody
question.
who hasn't been there.
That's an incredible question. What I will say, just from somebody else's point of view, when I came, I've been there twice, right? When I came back from Ghana, I made a promise to myself that when I went back, I wasn't going to go alone. And it was 2 or 3 years later when I went, yes, it's 2018. So 3 years later, I actually went back with my mother and my, at the time, girlfriend, who's now my fiance, right? And hearing from my mother that for the first time in her life, she was no longer ashamed to be a thick woman, right? Like, she traveled somewhere outside of America that has made her feel ashamed as a black woman her whole life for her natural God-given body shape, and seeing other women who look just like her 7,000 miles away. And she had, if she would have went to Europe, she wouldn't have seen that. If she would have went to certain parts of South America, she wouldn't have seen that. She had to go back home to feel like a person, to feel like she belonged. So not even just speaking from my own experience. I'm not saying it has to be Ghana. I can only speak to Ghana because that's where I've traveled. And they call it the gateway to Africa for a reason. So if you're going to pick any place, they have amazing food too. Amazing food, amazing people. I'm not sure.
All right. Do we have any questions from the audience thus far? Okay. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, how do you feel like America marginalizes black men, and then ultimately seeing that outward perspective? Because I've also got to travel out of the country, not to Africa, but to Europe. But to me, it was going to Europe and seeing so many different shades of black that looked like me, that didn't speak my language, but still feeling that community. So it was just like, we're everywhere, you know what I'm saying? But just that perspective, how did you feel?
I feel like dating as far back as the 1600s, right? Black people and black men have always been the number one export of America, right? And we're packaged, right? It's a lot easier to sell something when it's branded. So when we as black people, as black men, are branded as being either violent or hypersexualized or beastly, right? It's a lot easier to package us and present us in these ways. Even looking back to the 90s, look at how Mike Tyson was advertised to the world as this monster, when he's actually a very intelligent and sensitive and emotionally in tune man, right? But he was presented in this way. Even Trayvon Martin, he was a kid, but it was justifiable because supposedly he got into a fist fight with a grown man who had a gun, and it was justifiable to put 2 bullets in his chest. But you have to marginalize black men in order to justify that, in order to justify our genocide, in order for us not to be able to protect our women when master comes down to the shack late at night, right? Like, you have to put black men in this box. And in all honesty, it hurts white people so much more than it hurts us. So much more. We are their parents. We are their grandparents. We are their ancestors. So anything that they say and do to us, they are already saying and doing to themselves. This is how they feel inside. This is not a popular opinion. I know we don't talk about this. That doesn't mean it's not the truth.
I think that's some good guidance, generally speaking. You know, you want to see yourself in others, and so, in essence, how you treat other people is how you treat yourself.
Oh, there.
And there it is. I can't say I made that shit up. But anybody else have any questions before we let Mr. Kwesi go?
Mr. Kwesi,
Yes.
what do they call the Ghanaians? Where do they come from? How they got to Ghana?
How they got to God. So I actually didn't even know this before this wisdom was imparted onto me by Mr. Guillermo. But he informed me that Ghanaians are the original Jews who traveled from Egypt in order to preserve their culture and their tradition, right? And a sort of a true, what is it called? What did they say that the forefathers did when they came here? Escaping religious persecution, something like that. Right? They were looking for money, right? That's all that was, right? But this is what Mr. Guillermo informed me of, that when the Ghanaians left Egypt, right, that story we've heard about Moses and like the 40 days and 40 nights and then the milk of honey, right, like the Bible is a true story. I hope y'all know that, right? Like the Bible is literally a biography of world history. And I didn't know that the original Jews are Ghanaians. I'm sure they spread out amongst the area, but that makes so much more sense. Like tribes, what is it, the 7 tribes? And obviously not to brush up on my Bible history. But I hope that answers your question.
All right. Well, Mr. Kwesi, I wanted to appreciate, I've been trying to get you on the show for quite some time, and so I appreciate you gracing us, especially during these times, man. You are a brave, handsome, eloquent, and intelligent brother, so your presence is always a gift, man. And one thing I will say about truths, as Mr. Kwesi closed out about, the book being true, is, my most recent growth and development opportunity is embracing the idea that multiple truths can exist. So before I go deep on that one, we're going to take a couple-minute intermission as we get ready for our next speaker. Bear with us. We're going to play some tunes for you, and we're going to change over. So we'll be right back, and thank you. Oh, before I let you go, though, please, please, please support by donating. You can donate on screen. You can also follow Mr. Kwesi at Kwesi Dreams on Instagram. He also does financial programming, education, and advice. So hit him up. Hit us up. We'll get you his information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Music.
Say hello.
I don't even know if I'm live right now. You can turn it down. I look pretty cool though, don't I? I'm feeling it. I'm feeling myself up here. Welcome back. Thank you for bearing with us during that brief intermission. We're back here to meet for you. You've got some dynamic brothers coming to the stage to share their vulnerable truths as we hold space. So I wanted to bring up quickly my man Cat Fitness. Cat from Cat Fitness. Dynamic brother, cool cat, and he's made some transformational change in his lives and the lives of others. He's he's an entrepreneur. He has his own supplement company. Please, please, please give us a warm welcome out there for Mr. Cat.
My nigga, this is dedication. This is anti-hesitation. This is a real nigga celebration. It's a die-blind declaration. 59th and 5th Ave, granny house with vanilla wafers. It's the remedy to separation. Tupac of my generation. Blue pill in the fucking matrix. Red rose in the great pavement. Young black nigga trapped and he can't change it. No, he a genius, he just can't claim it. Cause they left him no platforms to explain it. He frustrated, so he get faded. But deep down inside, he know you can't fake it. How long should I stay dedicated? How long till opportunity need preparation? I need some real nigga reparations. Or I run up in your bank just for recreation. Dedication, hard work, plus patience.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? So, they told me to come on here and tell my story. And then they told me milk and cookies, right? And I was like, milk and cookies. And the crazy thing about it is, it actually spoke to me. Milk and cookies, what does milk and cookies mean? Like, we always think milk and cookies, Bernie Mac, right? Famous line, one line, Bernie Mac, milk and cookies, right? But it made me think of a time where I was innocent, a time where my imagination just was limitless. I can imagine anything. Everything was my reality as I created it in my mind. And going back to a time of my innocence and not allowing other people to create my reality, right? That's what I started thinking about when I started thinking about milk and cookies. But somewhere in between time, then and now, a lot has happened, right? Since I had my first milk and cookies. A time of people telling me who I was, what I was going to be, how I was going to suffer, creating this low vibration reality that I had to go through to realize that wasn't my truth. So to tell you a little bit about my milk and cookies, it's almost 6 years now, right? As I grew up, I joined the workforce, the 9-to-5 workforce that I did for 10 years, right? Everybody told me what I was worth hour to hour, week to week, month to month. And within that time, I got lost. I lost myself, right? I was trying to live an American dream that wasn't my truth. Something that everybody told me that I should be seeking, but it wasn't the purpose within me. And within that time, a lot of things started to change. I was using a lot of different substances to suppress certain feelings and certain things that were inside of me trying to grow, but I wouldn't allow it because nobody else around me in my community were speaking these thoughts, allowing themselves to be true to who they are. So what I began to realize is, let me suffer as much as I can. And what I mean by that is drinking, eating, whatever I wanted to, right? Until the point I got myself so sick that I felt like I was on the brink of death. So it's almost, 6 years now since I had my health scare. And within that health scare, one night I got rushed to the hospital where I woke up in the middle of the night. This was back in 2014. I woke up in the middle of the night having this extreme chest pain. A pain like I've never felt before. My chest was as tight as possible. I could barely breathe. I didn't know what was going on. It was 1 a.m. My wife was asleep. My 4 kids were asleep. I got up trying to walk it off. I told myself, be the man that everybody told you to be. Don't be vulnerable. Don't show weakness, right? At that point, I get to the bathroom. I'm almost hunched over on the ground, ready to pass out. Like my life is flashing before my eyes. In this particular moment, I felt death present right there with me. And all I could do was ask God for a second chance. And I said, please, whatever it takes, don't take me away from my family, my kids, my wife. I'll do whatever it takes to be a new man, a better man. Just show me the way, right? And the first thing I heard this voice come to me and was like, wake up your wife. You need help. So that's when I had to let go of my ego. My ego told me, hey, if you want to live, you're going to go be vulnerable, wake up your wife, and tell her something's wrong. So I get back in the room, shake my wife, wake her up, told her I don't know what's going on, but I could barely breathe. My chest is caving in. I feel like I'm about to black out. Her knowing me, knowing that I don't like going to the doctor, I don't like being in hospitals, I don't like that environment. She knew something definitely was wrong, that I needed help. So she called the ambulance. The ambulance came, the paramedics hopped out, did all my vital signs, checked me. Mind you, I was 80 pounds heavier than what you see today, right? Working my 9 to 5, making 6 figures, doing my thing as the American dream, as we've been, as that's been presented to us. So they were like, oh, from all your vital signs, it looks like you're having a heart attack. We need to rush you to the hospital. So get on. They put me on the gurney. They start pumping all this medicine into me, all these crazy things, rushing me to the hospital, taking all my vital signs. I was there probably for like 30 minutes. Anybody that lives in the Bay Area or was in the Bay Area in 2014 August knows that month we had the Napa earthquake, right? So I'm laying there in a hospital bed, strapped to all these machines and everything. And the first thing that happens, the room starts to sway and shake. And I'm thinking I'm checking out, y'all. I'm thinking that it's the end. It's like, oh my God. You know, when you have those thoughts, you don't realize all the regrets that you have in life when you think this is your last moment. Did I tell everybody I love them? Did I serve my purpose? Did I do all these things? I'm about to leave. Have I done everything that I could have? And I came to a realization in that blink of an eye that I haven't. And luckily, one of the nurses was like, hey, you know, it's an earthquake, calm down, relax. The doctor will be here in a moment. Doctor comes in after a while, goes over some of my test results. He looks at it. He was like, hey, you know, everything that you're telling us sounded like you were having a heart attack. But from the blood work and everything that we've done, it doesn't look like a heart attack, right? So I asked him, what is this intense pain that I'm feeling in the middle of my chest? He's like, well, if you continue to feel this pain, you need to go see a specialist. So he sends me to a specialist. Specialist checks me. This is where the story gets kind of interesting. I come to this specialist, right? Specialist looks at me, looks at my last name, right? Asks me, did I know a Gladys? I was like, yeah, I know a Gladys. That's my grandmother. He was like, I used to be her heart specialist. I remember the day she died. She also had heart issues. I was like, wow. He was like, yeah. I was like a 13-year-old boy when my grandmother passed away. So this is 20 plus years prior to this experience, right? We come across the same doctor, same heart issues, right? He said, he says, I know a lot about your family history when it comes to, you know, heart issues and everything like that. He said, what it sounds like is you might have a congestive valve. We might have to put a stent open up the valve to your heart to get the blood flowing. That's the tightness you feel. He was like, before we do that, we have to do what's called a stress test. Stress test, they throw you on a treadmill, get your heart rate up, kind of take pictures of your heart to see where they need to put a stent at, the whole nine. I said, okay. He said, that's worst case scenario. Do the test, everything comes back, guess what? Passed it. Nope, didn't need to put a stent in my heart, right? So I continued to ask them. I was seeking for something outside of me to give me my truth. I wasn't looking within. So I was like, so why am I having this pain, right? I wasn't asking myself. I was asking somebody else to give me their truth. And at that time, they're like, we don't know, right? But aren't you supposed to be the doctor? Aren't you the one to tell me what's wrong with me? So he was like, the best thing I could tell you is you need to lose some weight, probably, change your nutrition. That's all we can tell you at this particular point, right? So now the ball is in my court. I'm looking at it like, how much is my life worth? I just came in contact with almost losing my life, losing my wife, my kids, everything that I hold valuable to my heart. In a blink of an eye, my life could have changed. In a blink of an eye, my kids and my wife's life could have changed, especially being the sole provider for my family. So I told myself, what are the things, I asked myself, what are the things that are holding me back? Why am I 80 pounds overweight? Well, number one, I was an excess drinker. Not saying I was a sloppy drunk, but I drank, okay? I had fun, I partied, I did my thing. And when I did that, I didn't make the best decisions when it came to nutrition, right? Who does? Going to Jack in the Box late night, getting the ultimate cheeseburger, sourdough bread, curly fries, extra large drink. You know what I'm talking about. So doing those things and making those poor decisions in my life led to other things, right? Drinking, also the lack of energy to wake up to play with my kids and doing certain activities as well. So I was like, these things don't serve me anymore. Let me let them go. So as I started on my health journey, I started to let things go because I knew what to do. My background comes from strength and conditioning. I'm a former athlete. I know how to be in shape. I was just not implementing it at that time in my life. So I had to clean up these things. So within 6 months of being disciplined, loving myself again, understanding that I do have value, that I do have purpose, I was able to lose the weight and reinvent myself. And in that particular time, I really had to ask myself, where's my milk and cookies? What am I telling my kids to stay pure, to eat their milk and cookies, for them to dream? But dad's not doing it. I'm not being true to myself. I'm telling my kids something that I'm not even doing. So I'm being a hypocrite, right? Even though that they're not saying it to me, but I know, you know when you tell somebody a particular truth, but you're not living that truth, but you expect them to do it by themselves without anybody living that example. Yeah, I was doing that, right? So at that point in time, I had to reevaluate my life to the point where I asked myself, if I was here to serve my community, if I was here to give back, what would I do with my life if money wasn't a concern? What am I passionate about? What would I want to wake up and give back to my community each and every day? And I really thought about it. And I said, my true passion is fitness. I have a true passion of working with people, educating, inspiring, motivating them. That's what I love to do, right? So why not do it? Well, just like everybody else, I have, bills to pay, kids to take care of, everything like that. How do I make that transition? When I tell you this is when the story gets really interesting, it was a moment where only me and God had certain conversations, right? And I let my wife actually know that, I needed more time to make this transition. How am I going to transition from my 9 to 5 over into this being an entrepreneur and owning my own fitness company, right? So I was telling them, if this time presented itself, then I'd be able to do it. And guess what? Only God provided the time. He made this time happen out of nowhere like that. And to the point where I told my wife, I was like, man, I got 6 weeks off of work. She was like, well, isn't this the time you asked for? And I was like, well, yes. She was like, well, what are you going to do? And being the prideful person that I am, I was like, I'm going to make it happen. So within that time, I was able to make that transition. I was able to find my milk and cookies, y'all. And from there on out, for the last 5 years, I've been inspiring, educating, and motivating other people to find their milk and cookies. So that's just a story that, I want to share with you guys today.
All right, my man Cat. Well, you definitely came through with it. Cat. I have so many points that I could relate to, questions that I have, but selfishly I have the mic, so I'm going to ask other people if they have any thoughts or questions first, or if we have anybody online, because if not, I think my first question then will be, at what point you said when, if it was meant for you, the opportunity would present itself. Mm-hmm. But, they say when the time for action arises, the time for preparation has passed. And so what was it that got you to the point where you were ready to receive whatever was coming to you and knew it when you saw it, as opposed to so many of us or others who might have or receive their blessings but just don't know how to see them?
Yeah. So at that particular time, like I said, it was conversations only me and God were having, and then I was allowing to share that information with my wife. And one night, I was actually going to meet with one of my gym partners, somebody I trained with, right? And this is where a lot of synchronicity started to happen in my life. Every night, I take off my glasses, take them, put them in the center console of the car before I go in the gym and work out, right? Same routine every night, take off the glasses, put it in the center console, get my stuff, go in the gym, knock it out, come back, throw on the glasses, go home. This one particular night, I take off my glasses, come back, reach in the center console, glasses are nowhere to be found, right? I'm like, what's going on? Start looking all around the car, don't see them. Open my car door, glasses are on the ground, smashed, right? At that time, I was working a 9 to 5. I was a supervisor over at Comcast. So I traveled. I needed my glasses to drive. So what happened was I called in and said, hey, I got to go to the optometrist, get my glasses replaced. This is around Christmas time, right? I was like, I'll get a pair of glasses. I just need to call in for like a day or so to get them replaced. Go up to my optometrist. It was like maybe a couple days from Christmas or a week out. Told them what was going on. They said they were back ordered for like 4 weeks or something like that, right? So I was like, okay, that's interesting. Cool. I was like, can you write something up so I can give my job so I can, get this paid time off? They're like, yeah, get the note, take it to the job, get the time off, come back, start organizing my business, getting everything prepared, getting paperwork, transitioning my garage into a small gym, the whole nine. And at that particular time, I started getting clients. So I started getting momentum. With that momentum, I was like, damn, this 4 weeks is almost up. I got to go back to work, right? I was like, man, only if I had more time. So it was time to pick up my glasses, go in, talk to the lady. She's like, oh, you're back already? I was like, yeah. I was like, you told me to come back at this time to pick up my glasses. Talk to her. She was like, oh, let me see where your prescription's at. Goes to check the box where all the new orders are. Looks, doesn't see my prescription. And she was like, well, they're not here yet. I was like, well, it's been 4 weeks. Like, do you know when they're coming in or what's going on? She was like, let me check the computer. I said, yeah, check the computer. She looks. The initial person that was going to take my order or took my order never pressed enter. Oh, wow. So that prescription never got sent out. So I was like, oh. I said, so now what? She was like, well, we're still back ordered from the holidays. We're super booked. I said, how long until I get them? She was like, at least another 2 to 3 weeks. 2 to 3 weeks go by. And at that point, I have so much momentum going with my new business and everything. I was like, babe, I can't have 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I was like, you just have to believe in me. I was like, God is giving me too many signs to go in this direction. Right? I'm putting this energy into the universe everything is unfolding. If I go back there, I'm not going to be in a good space, right? Because every time I started to walk back into work, I felt this depressed feeling come over me. And I knew it was time to leave that chapter in my life.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So you were listening to the signs
Yeah.
internally. All right. Makes total sense, brother. And I'm glad that you made that trip because here we are.
Yeah.
Here we
This
are.
moment would have never existed. Well,
Yes, sir.
could have been.
I'm actually going to say that we are going to pause the questions for the second half of the show,
Okay.
so we can keep advanced. But for those of you who are out there with questions, our couch session, we're going to have all three speakers up there. So feel free to save your questions for Cat. He'll be on the couch with us. My man Cat Fitness 3 at Cat Fitness 3 on IG. Check him out. You'll be impressed by some of the shit you see up there. So we're going to take a brief intermission as we get our remote speaker situated, and then we'll bring you back in for our third and last speaker before we head over to our couch session. So thank you so much. In the meantime, feel free to donate, support if you like what you see. Follow us on IG, and if you have any feedback, we have a survey that we will ask you all to please fill out. And for those of you who do, we'll enter you in a $25 gift card raffle. So thank you, and we'll be right back.
If it ain't congratulating, then it look like him. If it ain't congratulating, it look like what nips.
Dedication.
Can you do a mic check? Can we hear him? Go ahead, Landon.
Landon, can you hear me? All right, guys.
We hear you too, man.
Yo, 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 yo. All right, we're back. Welcome, welcome for everyone out there. We've got our third speaker, Landon Dickey. My man is inspirational. He's eloquent. He's an educator. He's working in the nonprofit space. Please give your time and attention to Landon, who's joining us digitally with our innovative creations. So please give a round of applause for Landon Dickey. Landon, the stage is all yours. I'm actually going to tune you in with some tracks here, though, brother. So just give us the tune when you're ready to, or the sign when you're ready to go.
Too many rules to break, too many fighting that case. I gotta find my way, gotta need new shoes. If I lose, she lose, and I can get used to losses. Days like this, I wish all my love was
I'm ready. Thank you guys for having me. And it's been really inspirational listening to Questy and Kat. And I'm wondering how this whole kind of big brother floating head thing is working for y'all. But I'm the one scary person in the group. But I appreciate getting to be with you all virtually today. My name's Landon, based in San Francisco. Man, when I thought about milk and cookies, my mind went to a lot of different places. It went to my upbringing. It went to Santa Claus, and went to the Bernie Mac show, went to Kings of Comedy. But one story that I want to share that I actually haven't, I don't think really told anybody except for my wife and really close family. In one of my previous jobs, I was working at the San Francisco Unified School District and leading an initiative focused on African American achievement. And it was a job that was, way bigger than what I was ready for. And I say that not as a slight to myself, but just in reflection as kind of a recognition of what the moment was. I was doing something that I was so passionate about, and that was where my heart was and still is. And thinking about how to better serve students in the district where I went to school and in the city that I grew up in. But from the moment I started in the job, I found that it was much more than just a job. It was also, I was having this experience where I was reevaluating my own identity and what it meant to be a black man in the context of this role as I was thinking about serving other black students and black families. When I think about milk and cookies, so I remember in my third or fourth month on the job, I was meeting with a group of community elders, and I was in the trenches just taking grenades in my first few months on the job, just trying to figure out what I was supposed to be doing and how to do it as effectively as I could for the community I was serving. And I had a meeting with this group of elders, and they were listing out several things that I was doing wrong in the job at the time. Everything from not working with certain organizations to not reaching out enough and not communicating enough with people in the community. And at one point, they said that the perception of the community is that you are a house, fill in the blank, a house inward, as opposed to being in the field. And they were essentially saying I was an Uncle Tom, that I was a sellout, that that I wasn't who I claimed to be, and that I may look like a black man, but at the end of the day, I was not a black man, and I was not someone that was serving the community and doing right by the kids and families. And I was operating on very little sleep and a job that I cared about very deeply, and talking to people that I really respected. And I held it together for the rest of that meeting. Then I went out to my car and I just cried for about 30 to 40 minutes, and felt ashamed first of all to even be impacted by what they had to say, but also felt ashamed that I in some way wasn't living up to what I was supposed to be, or the leader that I needed to be to serve the community. And it took me back to other moments in my life and other times where I had when I heard similar things. It took me back to being in college, and as I was thinking about a certain career path, a friend calling me an Uncle Tom. It took me back to thinking about milk and cookies, hanging out with a group of friends, and late one night someone calling me an Oreo, black on the outside, white on the inside. And this is something that I wrestled with through my entire upbringing, and that I still do to this day. And that's that question of who exactly am I supposed to be? Am I portraying when I in my relationships the actual person that I am on the inside? Am I the black man that I'm supposed to be? Like I have no fucking idea. I don't know who I'm supposed to be. All I know is the person that I grew up as. And think about milk and cookies. I grew up in San Francisco. I grew up with my family. Milk and cookies in my home was, was Santa Claus. It was Christmas. And my family's story, my family's journey from Texas, from the South, from my grandma cleaning houses in Texas in Houston in the early '60s, and getting actually the money from a white family to hop on a train with my mom, my 9-year-old mother, and come to San Francisco and start a life in the Bayview. And thinking about my dad's side of the family and my grandfather moving here in the Great Migration, and starting to build a business in the Fillmore, and everything that he was able to accomplish. I spent a lot of time after that meeting with those community leaders feeling some sense of shame and some sense of questioning about my upbringing. And, at the end of the day, they don't know what's inside me. They don't know what what the filling is in the Oreo. They don't know what makes me up, what makes me tick. They don't know the story of my family or my background. They don't know my commitment to our community. And what I just wrestle with now is that who I am is enough. It has to be enough, because I have an opportunity to demonstrate to any black child, any black person that feels like they don't fit in a particular lane or in a particular box or in a particular persona that you're still black, and that there's still a place for you within the community. And so that was my reflection on milk and cookies, and that's where I'm going to wrap it. Thank you.
Nice. All right. Well, thank you so much, Landon. I'm going to give you a round of applause. Let's give Landon a round of applause. Hopefully you can hear us in here. All right. I don't think my mic was on. So we just gave Landon a nice round of applause. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us, Landon. Do we have any questions in the room before I dive in? Because I definitely identify with that Oreo comment. Nobody? Okay, the stage is mine. Oreos, Landon. What stage in your development? How old were you when you had that experience, and how did that affect you? And looking back on it, how has that impacted you today?
So I say throughout my life, there's been so many different labels that have been thrown at me, from literally being called, a slave in kindergarten, like the schoolyard games at a school with primarily white students, to being called Brillo head, which in middle school, which I didn't even realize didn't even realize it was, critiquing my natural hair that I love. I think I was either 16 or 17 when I first heard the Oreo comment. It was when I was in high school, and I was doing things like student government. I was putting myself out there, and I think the first time I heard it, people, in retrospect, I don't think I realized it at the time, people were saying it to try to kind of discourage me from being me and discouraging me from going on the path that I wanted to go on. But it still hurts. It still bothers me to this day. Luckily, most of us have grown up, but if I hear it, it's something that still bothers me, and I don't really know what that is. I don't know. I think it's just that feeling of being placed in a box, that feeling of being questioned as being inauthentic or not genuine or not true to yourself. That just gets me. In terms of how it's influenced me and the person that I am today, I think on one hand, I've embraced it in that I realize that there are, just dimensions to who I am, and that, I am able to walk across different spaces. I'm able to navigate all types of spaces because of my upbringing and the schooling that I've had and the people that I've been around. I wouldn't say I like navigating all the spaces that I navigate, but I've had the experience of navigating a lot of different spaces. But still, at the end of the day, I feel, solidarity, community with other Black people. So it's always, strange to feel at any time as if I'm cast outside of that. The other way it's influenced me is that I guess the negative end is that sometimes it's harder for me to really speak to who I am and share my full and authentic story because I'm afraid of the way it's going to cast me in people's eyes. And that's something that I still work at every day.
And so, Landon, would you say any of that spills over into code switching a bit?
Yeah, I'd say that sometimes I feel, and I've heard a couple of different stories about people that, left their 9 to 5, for a variety of reasons. But, sometimes I feel so compartmentalized, like I don't even know. Maybe that's why it graces me so much, that label, because I do find myself code switching and compartmentalizing. I have this lights, camera, action, it's like Sorry to Bother You. It's like the it's like the white boys. It's like, I don't know if anyone's seen that movie, but it's like it just sometimes I feel like it's a default, and that unless I'm really close to people, I can't even fully let my guard down and really let other people in. It's constant code switching. It's just that fear of letting the guard down. It's like just kind of the battle scars from navigating these different spaces that aren't always friendly to us.
Yeah, that's just work. It's a lot of work. You're already doing a lot of work. But we have a question from the audience, so we'll read that out for you.
Yeah, thank you, Landon, for sharing your story. And the chat rooms are filled with emotions as well from your story. But Tanya had a question. We want to thank Tanya from the audience. But Tanya wanted to know.
Thank you, Tanya.
Is it better to switch up your behavior in that case, or be comfortable standing alone?
That's a good question. I think where I've leaned towards, and I don't know that this is the right or the wrong answer, is being more comfortable standing alone. So that means, sometimes I might sound to people as a white person sounds. Sometimes I might sound to people as a Black person sounds. Sometimes I might sound like I don't know what I sound like, because sometimes I'm just weird. Actually, I'm a pretty weird personality when you get to know me. That's just a product of my family and the jokes that we would say to each other and my family, and the quirkiness and energy, and so you know, I'm also an introvert, so it feels all tied together. I'm kind of used to standing alone, to not necessarily melding into whatever is the group dynamic or the group mentality. And I don't say that as a point of pride. I just say that as that's who I am. So I've opted more to stand alone. Sometimes it's meant that I've had a smaller circle, but you know, I don't do a great job, especially the older I get, at trying to be someone that I'm not. So you know, I just kind of had to do what I've had to do.
Well, I appreciate you answering that. We got one more question before we head to our intermission, so we're going to take that real quick.
Okay. So I think you said, well, this is going to be a two-part question. Do you do you have kids?
No, I don't have kids.
Do you plan on having kids?
I do plan on having kids, yeah.
Okay. Have you thought about, because you're still dealing with this, I think you said it still hurts sometimes. And so are you thinking about how you're going to make them feel okay in their skin about who they are? Have you thought about that at all?
Yeah, so I mean, it's even, you know, I could write volumes on this, but it's even deeper than that. So I'm a black man. My wife is Chinese American. My child is going to be, you know, a Blasian child. What's that?
No, we're excited about the Blasianness.
Yeah, Blasian. We're all over Blasian, bro. Blasian.
We're just being Negroes over here.
Solidarity. It's all good.
Okay, sorry, I can't fully hear. But yeah, so my child's gonna be you know, mixed race, which, you know, we all have a little bit of different pieces in us, but my child's gonna be mixed race. So I think the identity question and that feeling of where do you belong is even gonna be you know, potentially. I mean, I don't. Who knows what the world's gonna, but it's probably gonna be similar, if not more strong than what I feel. And you know, I've thought about that a lot, and I think my main message is gonna be, you know, first of all, there's so many efforts to kind of divide people out of certain communities and be like, you're here, you're there, and I just think it's partially a superpower, like to be part of more than one community, to have a home and have a place among, you know, many cultures and in many spaces. And then, but above all that, just to know that there is no box that someone can actually put you in unless you accept being placed inside that box. And just, you know, I plan to just celebrate, elevate, have a lot of pride in everything my child does, and say, yeah, that, you know, you are a black boy or black girl. You're also a Chinese American boy and Chinese American girl. You're all these things, and people just have to fucking deal with it. Like, if they're not able to deal with it, that's really on them to try to navigate their own shit. But that can't stop you from being who you are.
Definitely, man. Well, listen, do we have any more questions before I move on? I relate in so many ways. This is partially the beauty and why I love doing this, because I get to hear and learn from each one of you. And I sit here and I listen to your story and I hear myself and I see myself in you, which is my goal. And, you know, it just enlightens me, because as I sit here listening to you talk, I'm like, we could be best friends. Because like your experience has been so similar to mine. And, you know, that is the beauty of what we're doing, is that you realize that you're not alone in this, and that the vulnerability just invites and begets more camaraderie and fellowship and support. And so I appreciate you, you know, opening up and sharing your story. And, you know, when this is all said and done, brother, I would love to grab some coffee with you, man.
Absolutely.
All right, for sure.
Yeah, no, when you were sharing your story a couple days ago, I was definitely relating. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are. Are you on IG?
I am, but don't follow me.
Okay, all right, cool. We ain't don't put you on blast. All right, my bad. All right, just disregard that statement. But you can look him up on LinkedIn. How about them apples? And we are going to go to a brief intermission, and then when we come back, please come with your engagement and your questions, because this next 30-minute segment is going to be the couch segment, where we have all three of our speakers discussing amongst themselves the topics and the questions that you are throwing out. So we can't have this without you. We appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please donate, because that is crucial to keeping this viable, as well as follow us on IG, and then follow the gentleman that you've been hearing from and that you will continue to hear from a little bit later. So we're going to take you to a brief intermission. Enjoy the tunes, and we'll be right back.
Black brother, I love you, and I'll never try to hurt you. I want you to know that I'm here for you forever true, 'cause you're my black brother, strong brother, and there is no one above you. I want you to know that I'm here for you forever true. I'm my check it, you got to walk and run. Tell you down for whatever you on the corner. Talented brother, and to every one of y'all, you know the end. Black brother, I love you, and I'll never try to hurt you. I want you to know that I'm here for you forever true, 'cause you're my black brother, strong brother, and there is no one above you. I want you to know that I'm here for you forever true. I'm my black brother, I love you, and I'll never try to hurt you. I want you to know that I'm here for you forever true, 'cause you're my black brother, strong brother, and there is no one above you. I want you to know that I'm here for you forever true. You mean so much to me, you give me what I need. I'm so proud of you. I love you for staying strong, you got it going on. I'm so proud of you. Going through thick and thin, brothers, you're gonna win. I'm so proud of you. Whenever you're facing doubt, brothers gon' work it out. I'm so proud of you. I got unshakable faith in your black brother. I love you, and I'll never try to hurt you. I want you to know that I'm here for you forever true, 'cause you're my black brother, strong brother, and there is no one above you. I want you to know that I'm here for you forever true. I'm my black brother, I love you, and I'll never try to hurt you. I want you to know that I'm here for you forever true, 'cause you're my
You may not be a movie star, you may not drive a big fast car, but I love you in every way. I love you in every way. I don't know why. Oh, why? I don't know why. I'll keep on loving you. I don't know why. Oh, why? I don't know why. Oh, but I love you in every way. I love you in every way. I don't know why. Oh, why? I don't know why. Oh, but I don't care about you. I'll keep on loving you. I don't know why.
everybody. For this portion of the event, first of all, thank you all for hanging with us. For this portion of the event, we're calling it our couch session. We've got our 3 speakers here with us. We've got Kat, we've got Landon here virtually, and then we've got Kwesi joining us, and then as well we've got our co-host Harvey, who's going to help us facilitate this discussion. But again, this is largely for your amusement in terms of trying to get your questions and your thoughts and your even concerns answered. So please dive in, throw out your thoughts, and we will jump right in. So I will actually cheat and pick up from one of the last sessions that we had and throw out a question that never got answered. And so I'll field it here and see how we think about it. And it was a question from a woman in the audience who had asked, how as men would we or should women show up for us? Or how would we like to communicate that how they can show up for us?
Anybody? I know in my own personal experience, the support of my wife has been huge, right? To make that executive decision saying that as the sole provider of my family, that I'm going to go from a 6-figure income to now being an entrepreneur, and we're not as comfortable as we used to be. You know what I'm saying? And for her to believe in that dream, believe in the milk and cookies, and say, I support you 110%, that's huge. Because what if she said something else? What if she was like, no, you have to work that 9 to 5, we have to maintain this lifestyle. How does that create separation in the household now? You know, now you're telling me to not follow my dreams? Like, where do we go from there? So definitely having somebody that once you know that you're following your passion, your purpose in life, to have that support from your significant other I think is huge and beneficial. Like, where else do you get it, you know?
Right. So then I'm going to toss this out to everybody. So you're on that end of the spectrum. You're married, correct?
Yeah.
All right. And Kwesi, you're almost, or are you married?
Yeah, I will be.
You will be. Okay.
It's spoken for.
It's spoken for. All right. Let's make that clear.
Right.
And so I guess that means, unfortunately for everybody, this panel is off limits. But for people who aren't so fortunate, and you know, on the other end of the spectrum, who aren't with somebody, who are in that phase of trying to understand themselves and find somebody else in a partner, you know, somebody who isn't as in tune with you as a married partner. What is your advice and thoughts to folks like that?
Go ahead. So, this is another unpopular opinion. Is this the camera?
Yes, this is the camera here.
I would say, in all honesty, especially when it comes to black men and black women relationships, what I ask is for black women to understand your traumas. I understand the ways in which you individually have been impacted by the effects of slavery. Because I'll never forget the whole black men are trash movement and how devastating that was to our community. And I'm not saying by any means black men are perfect, but I am saying black women are human. And there has to be an understanding that there are very specific ways that black women feel, well, this is just who I am as a black woman. But there's a book by Shahrazad Ali, right? And it's called The Black Man's Guide to Understanding the Black Woman. And it's a very, very powerful book. If you haven't read that, I strongly, strongly encourage you to read that book, because it gives so much insight into the very particular and specific ways that black women specifically have been impacted by the effects of slavery and everything that has happened since then. And of course, as black men, just like holding this space, I appreciate Denzel so much for holding this space. So as black men, we can understand and get back to our own roots of being vulnerable and being human. But those same spaces have to happen outside of here with black women. That's what I ask as a black man.
Landon, did you have something you wanted to add? I saw your mouth moving.
Yeah, so I'm just getting I can feel the energy of my brothers next to me. So I would say, like, so outside of the marriage perspective, what was huge for me, so when I was working in the school district, there was a community of black women that really supported me
awesome. Do you have any thoughts, Harvey?
Well, I want to ask, what would you guys recommend to other young men or men in general wanting to share their vulnerable truths and enter this space of health and wellness and healing? What would you guys recommend as far as taking that first step to doing so and opening themselves up to that space?
I would say, at least in my particular journey, you have to learn how to love yourself. You have to go within yourself and understand that we all have flaws, right? But what have I learned through my experience up to this particular moment, and understand that I have to release certain things in my past where I grew up, all these particular situations, to know I can't let those things hold me back moving forward, wherever my dreams may be, right? Having limited beliefs of what you're capable of doing, So for me personally, it was the first step was understanding the value that I had to give back to the world, the self-love, and then peeling back the layers of the onion of seeing where do I feel, how can I put it? Where do I feel like I've been told in the past that I don't have value, and understand that doesn't have to be my truth.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for that.
That's a nugget.
Hey,
That's a nugget.
y'all all been dropping nuggets out here.
So I'll say, first and foremost, absolutely learn to love yourself, right? And also get around people who support your vision. Honestly, that's the biggest thing, because like I said in the beginning of the segment, when I went to Ghana and I saw there are other ways to be a black man outside of what I've been taught and told my entire life, right? Get around people who are expressing a different side of manhood, one that you resonate with, that might not be your friends, it might not be your family, it might not be the people in your immediate vicinity. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but it's going to be worth it. Because if you keep doing the same thing expecting a different result, that's the definition of insanity, right? And this is, people can only do to you and say to you and act upon you the way that they do to themselves, the way they feel about themselves. So when we see even something as simple as black men killing each other in the hood, right, it's because of a deep-rooted self-hatred that has been planted into us by something outside of us. And until we understand the root of that, until we understand where that's coming from, nothing is going to change. So we have to change each other individually by changing ourselves. And then we'll change the world.
Thank you.
Did I tell you this man was a poet? Landon, what you got?
I would just, it's hard to go, it's hard to follow these two guys, but I would
Believe in
add on
yourself.
to that, I would add on to that, the one for young people, finding your medium. So, for me, I wasn't, it's taken me a long time to be able to be vulnerable and truly share my emotions and how I feel, but for me, rap and writing was something that was an early entryway into that in high school.
You got bars, Landon?
I love dropping this on people because they're always like, you? But yeah, that's something that I, since high school and, as recently as a few weeks ago, that's how I first started to just let out some of my emotions and just articulate the way that I felt. But I think if it's art, if it's essay writing, there's so many things. This is a perfect example of what you're doing, Denzel. There's just so many ways and so many different types of media where you can be vulnerable. So finding that and leaning into it. I'm also a big believer in therapy. I started seeing a therapist in college. I had a lot of kind of misfires and unsuccessful attempts with therapists, but finally found one that stuck back in 2015. Saw him for a few years and now started again. But for me also, because I spend so little time actually sharing my voice, it's been helpful to have that space where the time is really all about me, and it's been easier for me to then carry that into other spaces and with other people. The last thing I'll say is just having perspective, which I think is a little bit of what Questy was getting to. But being able to travel, I'm a big proponent of that.
Awesome, sweet. I'm going to invite another question/topic from somebody here in the audience. So, go ahead.
So, with the theme today being milk and cookie, I know that it has like not so positive spin on like the past experience that you all may have dealt with. Going forward, how would you like kind of like twist it so that you could still enjoy milk and cookie?
Almond milk.
Almond milk. Oh, there you go.
No, so did you all hear the question?
Yeah.
All right, sweet. So feel free, whoever wants to go.
Yeah.
Go ahead. No? Take the floor if you got it.
I believe that with every blessing comes a burden, and with every burden comes a blessing. And there are very specific reasons, just like I reflect on Kat's story about going to the hospital, and the same heart specialist who was helping him was the one who helped his grandmother, right? There's no such thing as a coincidence. Everything happens with the utmost intention. I even look at my upbringing, growing up in a home where I was raised by a loving mother, but one that was very traumatized, right, by her own personal history, and didn't know how to encapsulate that, right? And it just became her, and that was unleashed onto me. And that was very intentional, because that upbringing shaped me for being able to deal with a lot of things in the world that most people can't deal with. And I made that into my story and my triumph, as opposed to my prison, which a lot of people unfortunately end up doing. Mm-hmm. They take their traumas and they wrap themselves in it, and they wear it with this false sense of pride, when in reality, we should be reorganizing our minds in order to understand everything that happens to us. We don't have to regurgitate back out into the world. But first we have to become aware, self-aware. We have to understand who we are, what we are, why we are, in order to truly change. It comes from the inside out, not the outside in.
His first book is coming in the summer. Okay. I promise y'all. All right, Landon, you look like you had some thoughts.
Yeah, no, I mean, not a lot on this, but like the flip for me, Oreos are delicious. People like Oreos. And I'm not saying that from the perspective of, I'm trying to be white or anything like that, but what I more so mean is that I'm just trying to be exactly who I am and learning to reclaim my narrative and know that, you being exactly who you are is what it's supposed to be. I mean, there's no sense in committing energy to trying to fight the way that you show up, the way that you present yourself, especially if it's not causing harm or disrespecting anybody. So for me, it's just recognizing what's great about who I am, and that's my second act and what I'm trying to be about.
Dope. Go ahead.
So thinking back, like I said, when I think of milk and cookies, it always brings me back to a time where just being a kid and, not thinking of all the things that life begins to present to us when it comes to the pressures of life, and saying that I have to do it a certain way. I have to follow this system, right? And it's so funny because talking about just food in general, we have to realize that it's a lot of emotion when it comes to the food that we put into our body, when it comes to milk and cookies. Like, for example, I grew up drinking 2% milk, right? 2% milk, doing certain things, and now that's not my truth, but my mom and my family, certain family members, still live in that particular reality. And when I was going through my transition, and I told my mom I didn't want her milk anymore, right? I had to understand that it was an emotional connection to that, right? Like, I didn't realize that when she heard that, it sounded to her like, you don't love me anymore, right?
Right.
What did I do wrong as a parent? And I didn't realize that that's how she took it, right?
Right.
And moving forward, I know my kids are gonna have different things going on in their life, and their milk and cookies are gonna look different than mine.
Right.
So for them to come and present something to me that might not be my truth, and that's their reality. I have to be open enough to allow them to express themselves any way that they feel that they want in that present moment, right? So what I say is like, man, through this journey, it's going to be so many different type of milk and cookies that we come across, right? Just allow people just to be who they are in that particular moment, and as long as we don't place any kind of judgment or allow people to feel awkward in their shoes at that time, hey, let people be people, you know?
For sure. Man, I kind of want to jump in on this one too. Damn.
We got an audience question.
Okay, well, yeah, let's keep the show moving. We got an audience question, and this is all about y'all. So, what is it?
So we do have a question from the audience. It's from Randy. We want to thank Randy for asking this question. Randy wanted to know, do you guys think self-discovery work will change once we reopen after the shelter in place?
Will it change?
Will it change, or how will it change?
What will it look like?
What will it look like?
You said self-discovery. I feel like if you're on that particular path, it's nothing that can stop you from that particular journey. So I feel like this has actually been a blessing in disguise for my business and how I've had to transition, right? It was so many things limiting my business and how I wanted to impact the world based on the reality that I created prior to what was going on. Mm-hmm. And now, since everything is gone online and more digital and everything like that, now it's shown me that I can touch people all across the country right now using the tools that I wasn't even thinking of, right? So yeah, a lot of things are going to change, but I don't think that's going to hold us back from falling into our truth as long as we're open at that particular moment to allow that process to occur.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Go ahead, Landon.
I was gonna say that I agree. I think it'll potentially accelerate, because I think what this has done is take away some of the, I wouldn't say distractions, but let me just say over the last 2 months I've thought very little about what clothes I'm wearing. I haven't had a haircut. There's fewer kind of flashy experiences that we can have with one another, and what that leaves is just kind of the ability to connect and have conversation and kind of strip away some of those layers that I think were on us in the past. So my hope is that it can help us be realer with one another, talk more to each other, and the downside of that is because it could be because we're all scared of a virus, but I think that there's an opportunity in that as well.
Thank you for that.
And the word was self-discovery, right?
Self-discovery.
Absolutely. That's an amazing question. And I truly believe that self-discovery is happening right now, right? Some people are on the wave, some people are on Netflix, right? And this is really the time, like, I don't see things slowing down when the world opens back up. As a matter of fact, just looking at the pace of the world, it's an election year. In case y'all forgot, it's an election year. But how much have we talked about the election in the last 4 months? That means that we're going to have to cram 4 months of election season into whenever the world opens back up. And I genuinely don't think that things are going to slow down enough for us to keep pace, right? And so I really challenge everybody who's listening right now, ramp up your self-discovery, because we all have a purpose. We all have a purpose in this world. Some people lose their purpose. I love that story you shared about the job, right? You were literally killing your soul at that job. And it was telling you every time you walked in there, this is not your path, this is not your path, this is not your path. How many other people out there felt that way before quarantine? And do you really feel like you're going to have a chance after quarantine to discover something that you should be doing in your life? Honestly, this is the time for self-discovery. This is the time to just take a step back. And if you're taking a step back into Netflix or into drug abuse or into other things that are not serving you and lifting your spirit, you might be on the wrong path. You might need to reassess.
True. And so you say that, And we all know that things are easier said than done.
Absolutely.
Right. And so as I think about my own past and my own self-discovery, like, I put concerted effort into it. Like, I put work into that, right?
Yeah.
But it's not always comfortable.
No.
And like milk and cookies, we gravitate towards those things that bring us comfort and bring us soothing and are sweet to the taste and touch. The shit that's uncomfortable. So how do you motivate yourself internally to embrace the shit that's uncomfortable?
Everybody's looking at me.
You're the trainer.
I say, and this is what I tell my clients, like, for example, I had a client just last summer, right? He was 340 pounds. His goal was to lose at least 100 pounds, right? To get back in his target weight zone. And we all know what the big goal is, right? Whatever that may be for you. But we can't focus all our attention on that big goal, right? That's overwhelming. That can scare us at times. That keeps us in the bed and it's like, oh, I'll just get to it later, right? But if I can set small attainable goals each and every day, like if I can tell him, hey, all we're focused on is a pound a week, and by this time next summer, guess what? You're gonna be 100 pounds smaller, feeling that much better. That's attainable. I can achieve that. Every time I hit that small pound on the scale, guess what? I'm patting myself on the back. I'm excited. I want to see that next pound come off next week, right? Following that momentum. So what I would tell those that have those big dreams, right? Take it from the big dream and work your way back, right? To what can I do today? So 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, I can be living that dream, right? Whatever that may be. So scale it down as much as possible into bite-sized pieces. And each time you get to one of those bite-sized pieces of that cookie, pat yourself on the back, reward yourself. Keep that carrot in front of you. Keep yourself focused, right?
Question. So Landon, answer this for me. Is that our nature as a man? Is that your nature as a man to set small, attainable, maybe goals that don't necessarily feel like they move the needle, but over the course of a lifetime may have a huge impact? Do you naturally think that way?
Do I naturally think that way? No, I do not. I do not naturally think that way. I've had to train myself to think that way, and it's something where I have a lot of ups and downs with it. I mean, I have a planner. This is like relatively recent, within the last 2 or so years. I have goals that I'm trying to hit every year. I try to map it out by week, and I'll have good days, I'll have bad days, good weeks, bad weeks, good months, bad months. But I definitely agree with the idea that you have to have on your horizon some big goal that you're trying to obtain, and every day is just an opportunity to try to get better at it. And sometimes you don't hit that mark, and that's something that I've had to give myself grace on, because I can't be, killing myself and beating myself up for not accomplishing these goals every single day or every week or month. But I do definitely believe in you have to set your vision if you're ever going to have a chance to achieve it.
So true, so true. And I don't know if anybody played video games in here, but I used to be a hardcore Madden fan. And I'm telling you like this. I was doing one play, and I was trying to go for a Hail Mary every time. Because that touchdown, I don't care if it was 60 yards away or 20 yards away, I'm trying to score. And I'm not thinking about the next 5 yards. And that's how I was kind of conditioned to approach things. But it's very different in this game of life. And so to hear that, I appreciate you saying that, because I know it wasn't natural for me to think about things that way.
In all honesty, you gotta have the tenacity of a crackhead, right? Like, honestly, you gotta want whatever you want so bad that you're willing to do whatever it takes to get it. And the universe will literally open doors, right? And this might not be the best example in the world, but I believe that's how Trump won the presidency. Honestly, just look at his demeanor. Look at the way that he carried himself throughout that campaign. He had the entire world clowning him, but you could not tell that man he wouldn't be president of the United States. So either he knew something that we didn't, or he made a way through his intentions. Whatever the case is, what are your intentions? Ask yourself 2 questions. 1, what do I want? 2, how bad do I want it? And once you decide that, there's literally nothing that's going to get in your way. It's that simple. It really is that simple.
And
The
if
law
you-
of attraction.
I was going to say, if you reflect on life, think about all the things that you ever truly desire, right? And how you obtain those things every single time
Every
that
time.
you just set your mind to it.
Every time.
Right? And then things that were like, that'd be cool to have, but I could do without it. You would never get it.
Never.
Right?
Never.
Yeah.
The most powerful chemical factory is between our ears.
Yeah.
The most powerful chemical factory in the world.
Uh-huh.
Right here.
It was so funny because
30 seconds.
30 seconds?
Yes.
Go ahead, do it.
So I met my wife freshman year in high school, right? Sophomore year, I told my best friend, I'm gonna marry that woman one day, right? Not knowing how it was gonna happen, whatever, and it manifested itself. I just knew something deep down inside told me this was the woman that I was gonna spend the rest of my life with. Now, how it all worked out with all the obstacles and everything, it just happens, you know? Those are the things that we can't put into words.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Absolutely. So,
That's it.
Ashe, can we give everybody in here a round of applause? Jaren, you got me? All right, so I want to say thank you to everyone who tuned in tonight. You heard some amazing stories and some amazing perspective from these brothers. Whether it comes to, understanding where your ancestry comes from and who your lineage is, to knowing your truth and walking in your own path. I think the common theme that we've heard today is about self-discovery, right? And that's what this is all about, is understanding who you are through where you've been and who has been here before you so that you can get to where you want to go. So, that being said, thank you for coming out. We will see you next month. Please remember to donate. Fill out the survey for a gift card for $25, and we will kick you out with some of our tunes. Have a great day, and we'll see you next month.
Peace.
Good job, y'all. Great shit. Great shit.
On Instagram?
On IG, I just followed you today.
Okay. Let me